Hey guys, welcome to my visual road design and graphics guide. In this one I'm going to show you a quick fix for an ugly retaining wall, and then the ways that I detail the roads, the ways that I detail the freeways, and then some other mods and assets that you might need or might like to have graphics wise. There are a lot of mods and assets in this video. I did make numbered lists in the description, and then I'll have text come up on the screen pointing out each one and what number it is as we go along. So I hope it's helpful and you guys enjoy. This part of the video, I wanted to more finish up this section of road right here, add the details, make it look better, and fix the issues I'm having with space right here. So I'm going to start out with fixing the issues of space right here. I'm sure you guys, or most of you, are familiar with the Move It mod. It just has this little icon down here. Obviously it does what it sounds like it does. It lets you move things. So the first thing I'm going to move is this retaining wall. And I'm just going to shift it in towards that road, and you can see now we're starting to see some of that ugly stuff down there, so I'm not going to go, actually I am going to go that far because of the sidewalk that's there. I'm going to check to see real quick if those trees cover this, or these bushes more cover this, or because actually they cover it really well. So that's looking good as far as the retaining wall, the trees, or the bushes, and then the road there. For over here, if you're using Move It and you hold Alt, it will temporarily turn on node snapping, so you can hold Alt. Fix that. This one might be a little bit more difficult because it looks like it's going to have to curve. So I'll do that, and then I'll hold Alt and see if it'll line up. There. So you got it lining up with both of those. Now here's one thing I like to do with the node controller. This is ugly, the way that that clips over and over again. So this is something I found out that you can do with the node controller. Sometimes, it doesn't always work out, but sometimes it does. So you can use this twist, usually like for banking a road, and you can twist it until it lines up. And as long as over here you're not seeing any weird stuff with the terrain, that works perfectly. So I'm going to do 1.5 so I remember that. Or no, we'll do 1.4 because that looks better. So 1.4. Then I'll just twist all of these to 1.4, and you see how much better that lines up. Now I'm still seeing the shadow from that, from the slope right there, but we can cover that up with trees. I'm less concerned about that than when it's clipping over like this, because that does not look good. So I'm just going to do that with all of these here. So now that we've gotten our retaining wall moved there, I can move these trees back real fast. Scrunch them back up along the retaining wall, and then we have quickly fixed the issue with that stuff not lining up. Those are there. I'm not going to worry too much about which trees are on the side right now, because this is, of course that happened. That must have happened a long time ago, so I'm not going to try and Control Z it, and I'm just going to fix it. Now that the retaining wall is fixed, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what decals I put down, and just a quick bit about the intersection marking tool. So the intersection marking tool, you just pull it up, you press Control I, or if that's not working, you can also get to it in the roads menu down here by clicking there, and that gets you the intersection marking and the node controller mod, or the node controller tools, I guess, which I'm going to use here. So the first thing, just with intersection marking, I did make these lines here. You can see, if I delete that one, these are the lines that came with the road, these shorter dashes, and I just don't like them. So you can make lines that fit over that just by messing with these values here, the dash and space length. And I've made ones for this road that cover that up and make it, I just think that looks better. So I did already put the decals on one side, but I'm going to do it on this side here on camera so you guys can see that. The first thing I do with that is, obviously go to the decals, but the decals I use for that are just called road wear. There's 1, 2, and 3. So 1 is more defined. It's this one you see in that lane. 2 is more generic. I used it for the center there. And 3 is more for the edge. It has those kind of waves and looks like more of water stains. So I use that over there. And this is what you need, or one thing you need the prop line tool for. So here, this road's curvy, so I'll pick the curve. And I like to space these at 14. I do that pretty consistently, unless it's on pavement, like a parking lot, then I usually go down to 10. But overall 14 seems to be the one that I like, and it makes them filled in where there's no gaps, but also it also doesn't get brighter, if that makes any sense, when they overlap. So it tends to work out. So I just bring that in here. I line up the less worn spot with that dotted line. This is the one of the decals that I do try and line up almost exactly. And even if a road curves too much, I'll fade into a different one of the decals, because it doesn't look very good when the line doesn't line up with the lanes if you look at it closely. So it's kind of hard on this one. The other one's much easier because they don't really have anything that needs to stay on a specific point of the road when you put them down. So just use the prop line tool. It's a great mod. And then go ahead and fill this in. I'm just putting this one on the outside because that's what I want to do on this particular road, but you can always just change it depending on what you feel like. So we've got that one in, and then usually pick up number 3 for the edge. Let me see if I need to reverse it. See, I do. You don't see all that water damage down there, so I'm just going to turn it around 180, and that, I think it does look like the edge. So I'll put the edge one in here, and again, much easier because it doesn't need to be perfect. There's really nothing that doesn't look good if it's not perfect. So just quickly toss that one right there, and that's about it for what I do with these decals. I do the same thing on the freeways, and I'll show you when I'm going to show a little bit of this intersection, and when I do that, I'll show how I connect all the decals together through there. So when I put these decals in, one important step I forgot to mention about the decals as a whole is I make all of them procedural objects. So some of these you can see already are procedural objects, but I like to make them all that way. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and just only select decals here. So select all those, go ahead and select all these, and convert them to procedural object. And I mean, an obvious reason for that is to avoid the prop limit by converting any prop or decal to procedural objects. If it's one that it works out and it successfully converts, it doesn't count towards the prop limit, which is great. Also, sometimes you might see like your decals will disappear, kind of like that. When you convert them to POs, they'll just vanish, and all you need to do is just move them up a little bit. For some reason, when decals become procedural objects, they're more sensitive to going underground, and sometimes they already were underground at their default height. But another great thing is it gives you more control over the height of the decals. You can see in the median there, the decals filling in and going away, and that's just because I'm moving them up and down. To move things up and down slowly with the movement mod, you just hold Alt, and to move things around slowly, you hold Control. So say for these, they're procedural objects now. For that arrow that I added to that turn there, if I hold Alt, it moves in, I guess, 45-degree steps. If I hold Control, I can move it precisely, so it moves more slowly than my mouse does. And when you're moving things up and down, it's Alt to slow it down and move more precisely, and I don't think Control does very much in that situation, but I might be wrong on that one. So another thing I wanted to show you guys with the road here was just a couple of the props I use. They're just some specific ones that they're from the DOT collection I have in the description. There are a couple specific ones. I always put the signal before the lights there, that signal sign you can see. Also, get down to props. The right lane must turn right is a sign I see a lot in America, so that's must exit. It can be kind of, I do have too many props. There are some that I really just should get rid of, but that's not the one I was looking for, but it should, they're the same sign, so really it should just be fine. So that doesn't apply here, actually. It more applies down here. So you would put that sign here, or coming up to a traffic light where the right lane must turn right. You see them for the left too, but there's just not enough space to put that left one in there, so I'm not going to put that one in. I always do the lane drop ones. I usually search that, I just do right lane, and then that one will come up. Those are important, and then obviously speed limits, and you'll just, as you go through it, you'll find the ones that you want and just place them along the side. Also, I use prop line tool to use to put down street lights. These are the US Road Pack street lights, so they come with all the US Road Pack roads, and I'll go ahead and link those even though I don't use the roads as much, because I do like the street lights. And I put them in myself because With the roads here, another thing I wanted to show you with roads was the node controller mod, and control N stopped working for some reason, but you can always get to it in the menu. So node controller mod, this, as you see, is a custom node. It's not the middle, and the reason for that is it allows the smooth change into that right lane, the smooth change into this lane since it continues. But the consequence of that is that that would actually make this segment much shorter and this segment shorter, so it would interfere with the default location of those streetlights. And once you do it a couple times, like with there and there and there even, it would just, they'd start to be not lined up well and it wouldn't look very good. So I do the same thing with the props for the streetlights as I do with the decals along each road. And this node controller tool can be great for making smoother turns at intersections, but you do have to be careful not to pull it out too far, because then if you have cars not blocking intersections or not able, like this intersection I'm sure can't be blocked because there's too much traffic. It'll back up through here, and so I can't allow this intersection to be blocked, which means I couldn't pull it out too far, or else it makes a lot more cars stop here like they do, which is annoying. So beyond that, again with the intersection marking tool here, this filler is, I'll go ahead and delete it. You can put these pavement fillers in, which is really nice. So you just hold Alt, which is what I'm doing, and then click along here, and you have to get both those because it's a crosswalk. And then you've got your filler in there. So I can make it pavement. I always do 0.07 because that's the same height as these medians, and I like it to fit. And then corner radius was something they just added, which is great. It allows you to curve that. It would curve here. The reason it's not curving here is because those are actually two different points. When you put in a crosswalk, when you put in a crosswalk, then it basically draws a line here. So there's a line. It will end in a C. There's one for the other side, but that line. So that line's one you can intersect with. And when you build it initially, you can select this button here and do cut lines. So that would make it so any line that went through the crosswalk before gets cut, and then the filler then intersects there. Also, when you have a road that has a built-in crosswalk like this one that just won't go away for some reason, you can still put a crosswalk in. So there's still a crosswalk there. You can see it's just existing crosswalk, and then I can adjust the width of that crosswalk to adjust how far back it cuts the lines. Oftentimes it won't cut the one on the edge, and I'm not sure why. But the intersection marking tool is really pretty simple. You just drag and drop there. Over time you'll pick the lines you like and figure out the style you like for that. I at first started with really bright lines, but I found over time that it's best to just make them match the roads that you're connecting them with. Other than that, with the decals, sometimes I will run these. So here I probably would, just in case you're curious, what I would do with a decal here is I would just run this thick one, or not the thick, but it's thick one because it's thick. That's what I'll call it. You guys get it. So the thick one is going to come through, and I'm going to try and line it up. I could just delete the ones that overlap there, like that. And I'm going to do that here because this is the main road. But I don't bring that one through because that one has, the decal number 3 has those edges. So usually I'll just swap to 2. Intentionally overlap when I do that and bring it through. So then you could do that same thing on the other side here, and you'd also, so I've got the where for the left turning lanes. I would just drag that through. And then the same thing over here, so you would have that coming down and then turn there. And then as you do that through here, it'll fill in pretty naturally. And you can change it. One thing I was afraid to do at first, you can just change which decal you're using. Just add a little bit of overlap and it'll look all right. And you can even do that with this thick line there. I can show you somewhere that I did that somewhere else. There was something important I was going to mention right here though. I don't know. Hopefully I remember later. But you can see here, I did actually fade these thick decals into less thick ones. So it can happen, and it doesn't, I don't think that looks bad at all. You just need to overlap them a little bit and they'll fade in just fine. One more nice thing about the node controller mod is it allows you to actually stretch roads. So if you see this red node here is stretched to 130 and I can stretch it in or out. That's very helpful for intersections like this one, where you have a bigger road going into a smaller road, or even for spots like over here where I have this road shrinking down. So usually this specific road that I'm using here would only be this wide, but I was able to stretch it out to 190 right here, and then another one here. It's classified as a bend. The only difference there between a bend and a custom is the lines and crosswalks. But with this here, the stretching allows it to be much more natural than it would be, even if you had just stretched out one node and shrunk it down. And over here, the problem that it solves is, you can see in the intersection marking that right there, those lines are pretty close. And even with this left turn, those two can be pretty close. So if I were to shrink this back down to 100 on both sides, then you'll see these lines start to look much less natural. That one comes in and kind of, I don't know, to me, scrunches up against there. The left turns don't have much distinction between. There might not be a line there, but I think the left turns, actually, the main reason I did this was so the left turns here going into that lane and the left turns here wouldn't hit each other. But if you're having conflicts like that in an intersection, just go ahead and stretch it out. And then I even shifted this one a little bit, 2 meters, so that it would line up better, and then shifted it over here as well, 3. Anything like that, at first I really didn't take advantage of these parts of this mod when I first got it, and it was kind of just a waste of time because I would end up going back and using them when I was afraid to in the first place. So I would really encourage you to mess with those and see what all you can do with your intersections and your roads to make them as good as you can make them. But that's what I do for adding details to the roads mainly. I just keep going with that and connecting the lines here, and it comes together. Alright, so now that I've showed you the roads and how I set those up, I'm going to show you a few things about the freeways. Obviously the props, I do the same thing, just use the prop line tool, or for the lights I mean. So those are fairly straightforward, just like the other ones. I did want to show you, I haven't done decals on this particular highway just yet, and mainly that's just because it's elevated and it means it requires a little bit more work. So I'm just going to show you, when you put it elevated, all you have to do is just place it down, and then ideally, hopefully, there are no decals underneath, so then you just select only decals. And since I already have procedural objects around, like these signs, I'm going to leave them as decals for now, at least until they're in place. So I'm going to align them to this big prop, if I can. It looks like those are 2 props. So I aligned them to the gantry because those are about at the same height as the road. So then now they're just lined up, and there's no real issue with that. And I can go ahead and put them where I want them, so line that up there. And then before I convert it to a PO, since it's harder to place down the decals and this section of the road is straight, I'm going to go ahead and just copy it over here, and then even take the whole thing. Hopefully I don't catch any other decals. Copy that one and flip it over again. I used Alt, if you didn't catch that earlier in the video. If you hold Alt while using the Move It mod and spinning something around, it'll spin it around in these 45-degree chunks, and that's, I can't believe I didn't know that until a couple months ago, and it has made many things more convenient in this game. But yeah, so that's the decals on the freeway there. As far as the freeways go, I did want to show you guys, you can use the node controller to adapt your freeways over time. So like for here, you can see there's a shift. It's 1.6 meters if you're using these same freeways that I am. 1.6 meters will shift 1 lane. So this used to be a 5-lane highway, and now it's 4. Or actually, I think it was the other way around. It used to be 3 right here, and now it's 4. So when you either increase or decrease a lane, you're going to need to shift it 1.6 to get it pretty much in exactly the same spot that it started in using these highways, and that might apply for other ones as well. But that's a lot easier than trying to drag it and keep it lined up, because if you've ever tried to drag the highways next to each other, it's never perfect again, and like forever, unless you completely rebuild it, which is very frustrating. So that's a awesome solution to that, and I would I was afraid to use the shift at first because it kind of messes up stuff around it, but that's okay. When you go in and shift those other spots, the mod is really good at lining stuff up well for you. Another thing I wanted to show you was in the node controller mod here. That was intersection, or was it? So the node controller mod here, see if it opens. Most roads are twisted, or not twisted, that's what it calls it, twist here. They're banked in real life, but I don't go to that extreme. If I were to bank or twist all of the roads like they are in real life, then it would be a huge pain, because you can see here, when I bank a road, I always do it for a freeway during a turn, because that was, I feel like, one of the main issues that I was having before with freeways in this game, was that they weren't banked, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but once I did bank them, they looked so much better, and they look much more natural, and the cars going around them don't lean nearly as much as they did before. With this here, at first I had been aligning the roads, aligning their heights after I banked the road. I can show you that over here. That's what I did in this curve, and I'm honestly probably going to redo it, because it doesn't end up as a smooth curve, and I think it looks kind of weird, in all honesty. It came out much better when I decided to just go ahead and make the nodes themselves at the same height and then twist them and let them be misaligned. And I just put a little retaining wall in there. I'll link the retaining walls that I use. They're pretty nice. They're just fairly basic retaining walls, pretty thick though, so I use those to block off elevated highways and spots where it would be, or where I want it to be at least. I don't know what the word is for that, but like, not bridge. So that's what I do to not bridge my freeways when they are actually a bridge, if that makes sense. And then beyond that, talked about the twisting. With intersection marking here, another quick thing, if you use these same freeways I do, so I don't know if you see this, that doesn't line up, and neither does that. And that's because, that's not the right tool. And that's because that's just how these freeways are, only on the ends. But to fix it quickly, you can just open these, find the one that you're looking at, and then it's just 0.1. So you just scroll, minus 0.1. So since this side was minus 0.1, the other side would be plus. So minus, and then I go to this one, minus, and then I don't even need to look at the other side. I could just pick the edge ones here and go up, because this side was down. And see, it was already done on this one. But, so now this side lines up. And I didn't even have to go over and look at it, because it's just, if this was down 0.1, this side's up 0.1. And it maybe actually is 0.12, but with how many times I have to do this, and how many times you'll have to do this too if you want to use these assets and add the intersection markings everywhere, it's definitely worth it to just do 0.1. Right, the last thing I do to detail the freeways is adding all of these props. For the most part, the props come from the DOT collection, as far as anything that's on the side, or normal props like that, including these exit 40 mile per hour signs. I just changed the scale of those procedural objects, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. The only signs here that are separate from the DOT collection are the speed limit signs, and those I'll have linked in the description as well. I really like them. They're a little bit bigger, and you don't have to scale them up to get them to fit up on these signs, and they stay the nice resolution, so that's really nice. In order to scale things, if you aren't familiar, scaling things in procedural objects, I don't know why stuff wants to move when I first select it. That's what happened to that sign. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So you go into Advanced Edition Tools, and then you can change this here for stretching the model. You can always undo it, so don't worry, just mess with it. But you can see X, it thickened the sign. That's not really what I want to do, so click undo, and then you just need to do Y. And Z, it's a little bit bigger. Beyond that, when it comes to actually making these signs, you will need a couple fonts in procedural objects. You just open the procedural objects menu, obviously, and then go in there and text customization. But you will want some fonts. The first font here is the Roadgeek, or are the Roadgeek fonts. They're basically just some fonts that fit on these kind of signs, and it comes with a few different sizes. You can see the D, or the Roadgeek D, made it shrink down a little bit. And then if I were to pick C, shrink down a little bit more, it can help you fit some text on a smaller sign, or if there's something in the way. The other one you'll definitely want if you're making these signs is the route shields. So you can see here for the California route shield is actually behind that 33, and it's just a C there. If I changed it like to a U, it would do that. And it comes with a bunch of them. You can see, here's that characters table. There's a ton of them in here, and I really would recommend that as well. A couple other fonts that you really, if you're getting fonts, you might as well just grab them. I don't use them too much. One of them would be the arrows. So for using to make signs like this, you can use arrows. And then also in some spots, you actually can't change the color of those arrows or anything in the route shields. So if you need to make an arrow that's black, like this one, I actually had to make this one out of, looks like it's a group here. Make this one out of shapes. So you can see here, and I linked all of the fonts in the description below. So you can see here, it's this N is actually a shape, and it makes up one of those. If I were to backspace it, it would take away part of that. So it's just two shapes together, and that can help when you need to change the color. But that's pretty much what I do to detail my freeways, and then this would be, I'll go ahead and show you guys this real quick before I move on from that. So the way I like to add these lines on the side, it looks like I actually didn't do this one this way, so this is good to go ahead and fix it. So I always turn on follow guide, and then set the guide as just the two opposing lines. And then if the angle were 0 here, you would end up with just lines that were mostly parallel to that road. So then from there, I would change it to, change it to usually 30, just depending on how I feel. So then you can see the stripe, I guess, follows the curve of the road, so that's real nice. Real quick to wrap up this video here, some people have been asking about graphics mods I use and just other graphics things that I do. I don't really use too many graphical mods, but the LUT that I use is Springwood here. I have that linked, and the theme is called Arid Beauty. There'll also be a link to that. Any notable mods that I use here would be Daylight Classic, just the default settings there, and I really like the Shadow Strength Adjuster. It just gives you a slider, and you can adjust the shadow strength, and it happens immediately, so it's really nice for trying to fix up some spots or make it so the shadows aren't so dark in the spots where they're ugly. And then finally, just so I can see further away and see the edge of the map, is Clouds and Fog Toggler. So that should wrap this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.